Hello everyone! Today's video lecture shall focus on the continuation of my discussion about the receptive skills. So let's just have a review of the four aspects of receptive skills. The first one is the critical reading, followed by the critical viewing, and then media literacy, and then of course critical listening. However, for this particular video, my discussion shall focus on the critical viewing aspect of the receptive skills. Okay, so why do we need to analyze visual images in the first place? I know for a fact that we're all familiar with today's digital age, which makes us more exposed to a variety of multimodal texts. What are these? These come in the form of still pictures or moving images with sound such as advertisements, comics, videos, posters, text messages, and of course the use of social media. In fact, in 2019, Statista.com made mention about the fact that the Philippines is still one of the leading social media users in the world. And these are the social media that we use. So leading on the list is Facebook, followed by YouTube, FB Messenger, and so on and so forth. Thus, because of these findings, I believe that there arises a need for us to focus on the critical visual learning aspect of every learner. Especially so that when we talk about the Gen Z learners, they are described as mostly visual learners. Hence, the need for them to be more digitally and visually literate. So I believe that majority of my students now are part of this particular generation. Now, the study of Brownberger in 2011, however, revealed that the college students are not adept at interpreting visual communication. Producing and interpreting. Okay, so here we highlight the fact that we need to orient the Gen Z audience or the Gen Z members of our society, like students like you, that we have to be more critical when it comes to the things that media feeds us in terms of the multimodal texts rather that we are exposed to. So the analysis of visual text stemmed from the meta-functions of language, which is originally by none other than Michael Halliday. So these meta-functions were adopted recently as the researchers Gunther, Kress, and Van Leeuwen in 2006 analyzed visual images. So every language learner would be familiar with the three meta-functions of language by Halliday. What are these? As seen in your screens, we have interpersonal, ideational, or textual. So let's take interpersonal first. When we talk about interpersonal meta-function of language, we refer mainly to the social world, to the interactional function of language. That's why another synonymous term for interpersonal would be interactional function of language. Okay, this refers to the connection between and among participants. So mainly the highlight here is the establishment of rapport between and among the communicators in the communication process. Okay, when we talk about the ideational, it is also known as representational. Okay, this is referring to the natural world to the consciousness and representations of language. Okay, so what do we mean by that? It focuses on the semiotic function of constructing meaning. So we recall what semiotics is. So basically, semiotics is the study of signs and symbols. So this particular function of language covers visual images, symbols. Okay? More particular examples would be ads or advertisements, maps, okay, and so on. Okay. For the last one, which is the textual function of language, this meanwhile talks about the verbal world. Okay. It focuses on the flow of information in a particular text. Other than that, it highlights the informational value that we get from language per se. So whether it be spatial, salience, or about framing, okay, these mainly talks about what or how we interpret particular texts. Now, what are the differences between mainly visual literacy and critical visual literacy? When we talk about visual literacy, it merely refers to the reading of the text. Whereas when you compare it to critical visual literacy, it goes beyond the mere reading of the text. It looks into the deeper purpose of why we read or why we view things. Okay? In other words, it highlights the relevance of these texts, these materials, as we relate to its relationship in the society. So it says here that the empowerment of learners to appreciate the aesthetic qualities of texts, analyze these texts as sites of ideological struggle, critically negotiate meanings with problems of visual representation or misrepresentation, and of course use creative tools as instruments for self-emancipation and social activism. So again, it goes deeper. It targets more of how it would affect the person, affective value of reading towards a particular reader, towards a particular viewer. Okay, so in addition, students are viewed here as active agents interrogating different forms of visual culture in the process of deconstructing texts and using their creative voices to promote an equal democratic society. So, in other words, critical visual literacy would want to emphasize the role of students and their curiosity in promoting democracy, in giving everyone voice, and in critical thinking that is being applied among issues in the society. Okay, so we deconstruct. We don't just merely rely to the obvious meaning of texts or videos or multimodal texts in general, but we look into the deeper process of deconstructing it and of course analyzing it, cutting them into digestible chunks that would be up for interpretation, because everyone has a voice when it comes to critically analyzing things. What else? It aims at promoting social justice as it examines the operation of texts in shaping the attitudes, beliefs, and values of the individual and group. It also gives emphasis on texts as sites, signs, and sites of political agency for transformative action. Okay, so it was a reiteration of the previous slide's message that we are more empowered when we become critical visual learners other than just merely looking into the surface. In addition, I would want to also note a recent study that I have found in relation to our topic. So I saw this study of Newfield in 2011. It talks about the emphasis on the position and the positioning nature of visual text on the sociopolitical consequences of semiotic choices in visual texts. Okay, so it also highlights reading against rather than reading with the visual text. So if you are more critical, you tend to argue, you tend to challenge the ideas of the author. It's not just a passive receiver on your end. Okay, you are not just considered to be just accepting and accepting ideas. Sometimes you challenge it, sometimes you disagree, okay, or sometimes you just partly agree. But then again, the emphasis here should be more on the critiquing of these texts that we consume. Okay, so how does one become critical visual readers then in relation to the previous video on critical reading? So if we relate critical reading and critical viewing, how do we do things? The first one is we have to analyze text and looks at intentions. Okay, we have to look at intentions and then points of view and biases. Because please take note, everything, okay, is subject to the author's bias. Okay, what do we mean by that? Okay, so of course, if you are an author, you are writing about something on a first person point of view. Okay, so when you talk about things based on how you interpret them, you unknowingly ingest your personal biases to what you are writing, to what you are producing. That's why if you are a critical visual reader, you have to be more familiar when it comes to this. You have to be more critical and don't just accept and accept. Okay, that's the reason why for research we look into several different references and we don't just rely on one single reference alone. Okay, what else? We evaluate the text's socio-political context. Okay, so the background of the text, the author of the text, so the educational background perhaps, or the sociological background of the author also. Okay, what else? The setting with which that particular text or material was produced. Okay, so those are all contributory factors in looking into the background, okay, and analyzing how this particular author thinks or views different issues. What else? Read what images and passages are saying. So what messages they are suggesting and how they are shaped to influence the attitudes, values, and beliefs of readers or viewers. Okay, so especially in the field of advertising, we have what we call as subliminal messages. Okay, so these are messages which are not directly being stated in particular ads. However, it has this effect on the consumers that they are able to recall something because they associate a certain meaning with these examples. Okay, what else? We have to look into the biases in terms of the words used, the vocabulary used, and of course, the expressions that were included in the text. Okay, the overall idea. That's why we have to be crucial readers as well, so that we would be what's this? We can be more we have to be more watchful when it comes to the terms that are being used by these particular authors, because they absolutely would affect the viewers or the readers of the text. Okay, what else? Understand symbols. Of course, it's a reason why language is a very good study. We look into the verbal and nonverbal symbols. Okay. The color, for instance, would talk about something already. Red would mean something. Like for now, one issue would be the red being associated with activism, and then yellow being associated with the opposition, and so on and so forth. Okay? What else? Analyze, evaluate, and then assume. Okay, you look into the assumptions, the beliefs, and of course the practices, which vary from culture to culture. So reading with an open mind would absolutely help in making someone a critical visual reader. Okay? So thank you for listening to my second lecture on the receptive skills. My third lecture will focus on the media literacy aspect. Thank you.